So far, it looks like I'm gonna coordinate a staff meeting, not a. Do you have any updates on anybody else? Kitty? Okay, I didn't,
No. And I sent out a reminder at a
yeah,
little bit after 9.
And Ken won't be here today.
okay.
But Steven's here.
All right, we're just waiting to hopefully get some more members so we can actually have a meeting.
That would be nice.
Rick, you said something, but you were on mute.
Ah, I figure we'll give him till 10:05, and then I know Alexander has to go by, so we'll just start at that time. I just realized we all got here early because it's only 10:02.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna waiting for in that and. And I guess one, Rick, while we're waiting, did we get a new member, the one from the Eastern Oregon Center? Or not Eastern Oregon, the Bend, Deschutes,
Yeah, Kat,
yeah,
Catherine.
Kat. I just didn't see her
Yeah.
on the members as attending or absent from the
Yeah,
last meeting, so I didn't know when her official.
yeah, we're actually catching up. I don't know if you guys if it's been sent out yet, but I know that we had to catch up, do some housekeeping on getting letters out to people. So, but yeah, she should, if she has time or if it's on her schedule, we're getting. She should be here.
Catherine
Although the first of
Zoltan.
the year, some people are on vacation also.
Mhm.
With Angela, I think we might be hitting the quorum. Heather and Jan are the two we're. I would say we can go ahead and get started. I think there's a little bit of question if we're actually have our quorum, because I believe it is 50% of the members by the bylaws for the, and I see Judy nodding, so. So officially, we needed one more, I believe. With that, and so for others knowing that, Alexandria has to take off at 20 after or quarter after area in that. And so let's go ahead and start into those items so we can get at least the information out and we can address the issue if this is an actual official meeting and quorum or not as we go on. And if someone else joins us membership wise, we'll definitely get it and can circle back around with that. So welcome, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good 2024 so far, being that we're 3 days into it. And want to actually kind of jump forward. Do we have any input or comments from public? Judy or Rick that you're aware of? You're on mute, Judy.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And that, and nobody in the waiting room and nobody we don't recognize in that. So with that, I'm gonna hold off on approving the minutes from the last meeting and hope we get one more member, but want to give John and Alexandria a chance to report before she has to jump off at quarter after.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate the time accommodation as we get closer to short session. The tighter my time becomes. Beginning in February, we have the 35-day sprint that is short session, but coming up next week, we have the little kind of preview legislative days, the 10th, 11th, and 12th of January. I expect we will see some things related to manufactured housing this short session. Typically, we see fewer bills, kind of less expansive bills. That being said, the governor has a lot of housing production related bills coming up this session, none of which particularly touch in kind of the manufactured sphere, but you know, they don't entirely not touch on that. And then just, you know, we will see legislators, they are restricted to 2 bills each this session. So a much shorter list of bills that are coming forward. I have not heard of any bills related to manufactured housing this session, but legislators don't tell us everything. So John may know about a couple that I don't.
So
Yes.
I would agree with Alexandra. We don't know, and legislators don't do what we want them to do. But the legislator who is most attuned to manufactured home park tenancies is Pam Marsh, and I am in close contact with her, and she is not going to do anything in the 24 session on manufactured homes. She is looking at 25, but not 24. And Bill Van Vliet, who is the executive director of NOAA, and I are working with her on issues for 2025. There was a good article in yesterday's Oregonian, in which I think it was the Oregonian, in which they interviewed the 4 leaders, the 2 Ds and the 2 Rs, President of the Senate, Majority Leader, Speaker of the House, and Minority Leader. Excuse me, I've got a horrible cold. And there clearly is bipartisan support for a lot of focus on housing, but more housing production and things that might stand in the way of housing production, including provision of infrastructure. At the governor's office, staff presented at the Housing Alliance last week, I think. No, it must have been 2 weeks ago because I was in Mexico City getting a cold last week, and for my 7-month-old grandson. And one of the questions asked of Matt Schabold was, well, what about preservation money for manufactured home parks? You know, the governor's asking for all this money. Can't we get some more money for preservation of parks? And the answer was no. But that's, I mean, not no, mean-spirited way, but just that's not part of the governor's plan at this point. So that would be the only thing that I might anticipate there being some emphasis to try to get some money for preservation. And that simply mean it would help CASA or nonprofits or NOAA to help residents or nonprofits purchase a park that's for sale. So that's all I've got to add. So I'm glad that Alexandra and I are on the same page.
It's a good spot to start in that, and like you say, we'll know more after the legislative days and the short session, and it sounds like more is the planning, the longer one into the next full session, which is 2025 and that, so. Great. And one quick pause, Rick, is Samantha a member of the committee? I'm just trying to figure out the quorum piece if we're there.
No, she's just
Okay,
she's just attending.
okay, that's what I thought, but
Yeah,
I'm looking for that one more person for
Oh.
to officially have our quorum. That's why I wanted
yeah.
to check on that.
No worries.
And so appreciate that. And as always, if there's anything we can do as members or hear anything, we'll definitely share that back through those back channels, but we'll be optimistic that the short session will be productive and an example of people getting some things done and playing well together in that. With that, Samantha, you're here on the training piece. Where we're at is a little bit of, we're not officially at our quorum yet, but we're going ahead and getting started with the hopes that we'll be able to circle back around when we have another member show up to make it an official quorum and backtrack and review some stuff a little bit. And with that, what I'd like to maybe do to help free up staff folks is there anything you want to touch on, Rick? Or I'm thinking Stephen for data and reporting.
Yeah, Stephen is filling in for Ken on some of the data and reporting. There he is. Hey, Stephen.
Great. And so for folks that are remembering, we've kind of added this as a standing piece to get the input from and be able to share that out to help guide us from the participant surveys, as well as what is known as that mediator report piece to help guide us and give us some feedback of where cases are falling, where the issues are, to help identify those pieces. And so Stephen is going to be recapping the first 6 months of our fiscal year, which is July 1 through the end of December, though won't hold you for having all the December stuff in yet, because I'm guessing there's some centers that may not have gotten you all the information, myself included. So with that, Stephen, what are the numbers looking like?
You hear me? Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so the report that I have, I can get the, see, now my software here is not working. I'll change this. Actually, let's give me the total. All right, I'll share my screen real quick. I made the report that I made for this meeting. Is this the right screen? Can you guys see my screen?
Mhm.
All right, so the report is still a cumulative from 2021, but I do have it broken down by 2023. And for 2023, you can see that mostly this is only for the resolutions for each of the mediation sessions, complete agreement for the 4 clients, and these are total participants. This is something that I worked on. And the it might look low here that it's 4 to 4, but due to the way that it's counted the numbers, it's good to just look at it as a proportion. And of course, most of it is complete agreement, partial agreement. What did went up a little bit, let me just go to the main report. What did went up in the last year was the amount of no agreements. And I think that's because in the last year, the amount of mandatory mediation sessions went up by a lot. And that's also due to the fact that in the last year, there was a lot of court-connected mediation sessions. Like we had 237 total. And for 2022, comparing it to last year, it was significantly low. I think what happened was that more community centers are doing court connected mediation sessions. And then as an overview, as a total, we had 589 total participants. We actually had 451 surveys filled out. And these are just the case reports that we get from the centers. And most of them, the increase, as I said, court-connected mediation sessions. Of course, the standards is at 34. We only had 4% of the mandatory mediation sessions that were declined. No new in the last 2 quarters. So that's pretty good. If you look over by county, of course, Jackson is the one that we get a lot of cases from. Also Marion County with Neighbor to Neighbor, Clackamas County, and a few from Beaverton mediation session. And from the last meeting, something that was brought up is that we wanted to focus in on the core connected session. That is something that we've done. I think I covered it at the beginning. Most of it is due to unpaid rent and rule violations. But the good thing here is that most of them, the result of it, it goes to a complete agreement. And then for the participant surveys, which is mostly just dealing with the demographic information, there is still the challenge that we have that when most people fill out the survey, they click choose not to respond. So it's at 74%, and then the rest at 20 is white. There is a few American Indian, Native American folks that make up of our respondents. And then for ethnicity, same deal here, choose not to respond. And then after that, it's mostly non-Hispanic or Latino. Gender, yeah, this is a common issue, prefer not to say. But here, interestingly, it mostly skews female. And then for the the sentiment that we get when people review the mediation process is that it's mostly great when it works. So agree. For people that we asked the question, do you find the mediation process fair? 36% agree, and 62% strongly agree. And then for if the result of the mediation was satisfactory, 45% agree, and 51% strongly agree. And then of course, strongly disagree, 4%. And for if the process was fair, 1%. And then most of the comments that we got are pretty positive. There were a couple offering suggestion on how to make the process a bit more transparent and work better for the clients. This comment writer asks that more information should be supplied to the resident, about the purpose of the scheduled mediation and working around schedule conflicts. So yeah, that's what I have for you. I can send this report here after the meeting, and I should be able to provide data exactly in the time period that was asked for. I was not, to be completely honest, I was not, how could I put it? I was not let in on that. We wanted the first 6 months of the year. So right now, most of it is culminative. It's just a combination of all the reports that we've had since the inception of the program. But otherwise, yeah, that's what I have for you folks here. If
Great.
you have any question.
Just one is
Hmm.
those calendar years or fiscal years that you're reporting by on the years there. Let's say 2022, is that July 2022 through June?
So it would be, yeah, so it
2023,
would
or is
be
it-
it would start of the physical year of
Okay.
2022. Because yeah, so it's from 2022 all the way up to last week, basically. So these are the total numbers overall of the program. Yeah.
No, great, no, the-
What? Yeah, what I showed at the beginning with the numbers, these is just for last year. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll get that see if I can narrow in on the numbers for the time period that you guys talked
that's,
about.
no, I'd say that's fine, calendar years versus that. I was trying to make it easier for you and that's why I was making the assumption that your data was by fiscal year, not calendar year, but I think we can work with calendar year just as well.
Okay.
It's just knowing.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at resolutions reached, that
Mhm.
first page. Did you have other pages from what you were giving a lot of data? And, did you have other charts or pages with that data? Or was this just the page we're looking at? I was trying to follow what you were saying, and I understood what you were saying. That's not an issue. It's just I wondered if you had other pages for us to look at while you were speaking.
Well, in terms of the charts here, so the resolutions reach graph that you see here is just like the highlight of all the numbers that we have. Because this is like the main focus of if the program is doing well, and according to what we get back, it is. The other charts that we have, if that's what you mean, we have the by county, which can tell you which county is getting a lot of clients and where we could help out counties that probably need more services. There's also the demographics charts here. Yeah, but that's mainly what exists in this report. If you really want to get into the details, this is the main part of the report where you can see center by center and see exactly what is happening, like the issues disputed, who declined mediation services, and if it was declined by which party.
Okay, for resolutions reached,
Mhm.
I cannot tell center by center. And that's, I can see, for example, 2021,
Mhm.
how much there was for complete agreement, partial agreement, no agreement, mediation did not take place. But I assume that is for the entire state of Oregon.
Mhm.
And I cannot see, it's not broken down. And I was, so when you talk about it, broken down, so to speak, I was just wondering if you had other charts to show us. If not, that's fine. I just wondered if I was missing something.
Okay, I took understand what you meant. The chart is just for the overall. If you want, for example, if you want to know neighbor to neighbor, the breakdown for that CDC, it's in this report. So we can see for neighbor to neighbor, 89 complete agreement, partial agreement was 16, and no agreement was 27, but no chart for each individual CDRC, but the information is in this report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a manager of a manufactured home park, and I am very unknowledgeable. And so you're talking about this being in this report. Well, where is the report? I mean, how would I go find that report? Where is the report that I could look at?
Usually the report is sent out in the email to the invite to this meeting. And usually there should be a link provided to the report that gets sent out through the email list to all of our partners.
Okay,
But
so
yeah.
maybe
Can
I'm
you just
just,
explain maybe
maybe
a
I
little bit,
missed some-
Stephen, what that structure is? Because I'm at the same place and I hear that you're kind of playing catch up a little bit as far as what you were to have for us as a committee and that, and I'm just curious, and it might be helpful. How does this data just flow from you collecting it from when it's in and reviewing it out of Qualtrics, which is, for those who don't know, that's a big data management tool that a lot of different can be used in a lot of different ways. The CDRCs put in those surveys and what's called the mediation report into this.
Mhm.
Or a client can choose to enter it themselves as far as that participant survey. And then Stephen is able to look at all those pieces and create a report. And that's what I hear. The question being, okay, once you create it, I just heard you mention something about a partners meeting and email with a link. Who is that?
On my end, I create this report each quarter, sometimes monthly, but it's done each quarter. And I send it to Ken, and then that Ken sends I imagine that Ken sends this report along to the email list to all the relevant partners. I'm not too sure how it gets distributed. And in the past, it has been distributed. It's always been attached to the invitation link to this meeting. So, yeah. I think it didn't happen for this meeting. I did not get the
If
the
this
email for
report,
this. Yeah.
yeah, I could jump in real quick. If you guys haven't been receiving this report, we could definitely have Ken send that out. I'm not, I'm not aware if he's sending it out or not sending it out, but it's simple enough for me to find out. And it sounds like you guys are not receiving this report, so I'll make sure that it does get out.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is that, and you know, you can get it from Rick or if you want, Stephen, there, one of the questions that one of the some of the CDRCs have identified is a request to separate out
Hmm.
the participant information in the report and make that a separate document, because one of the hiccups they have is they feel like it's identifying too much of the case information. And one of the things I believe Ken was working on was getting a separate report that just had participants in that for the letter to go out, and currently why that information is within that mediator report was the concept was that's where the MMCR was going to pull that information to send out letters, but it was brought up and I feel like it was like one of those aha duh moments for me, because it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense and it's a real easy fix just to pull off the participant name, address, and park information out of that what's called that mediator report that's completed at the end of a case. And we can talk more about that offline, that we don't
Yes. Yeah.
have that here, but.
No, I did have Ken prepare some of those letters, and Judy, I forward those to you. But let's, what we'll do is send those out to you guys to take a look at and comment on them. But I'll go over with the letters with Judy, and then we'll get those out for you guys today to take a look at and review. Fair enough?
Yeah, and just that, and appreciate it, Stephen, because like I said, so much of it is starting to get the data so we can make conversations and directions based on some data versus assumptions and get best guesses. And so appreciate all the work that you're putting into this and look forward to being able to, I think all of us, to dig in a little bit and separate, and then could have some feedback on how to make it more meaningful.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I definitely, Stephen's been in the, is the one getting into the weeds in this thing and getting all this prepared. So truly, Stephen, do appreciate all the work you've been doing on this. Thank you so much.
Great. And with that, Rick, do you have anything to cover on Ken's section as far as the revision to the non-compliance?
We're working on those. Those are the letters that we've been as a team being edited and editing them. Wow. And we'll send those out, samples of them to have you guys take a look at and see if this is what you're looking for. And so we can, but they are done. We just have to take one final look at them and then send them out to you guys to see what you think of them.
Great. And
Stephen, you can close your screen if you want.
Sorry about that.
that's all right.
Stop share. There we go. There you go.
And did anybody else have questions for Stephen on data or other pieces at this point? If not, we can, I'm guessing we'll have a lot more of those after we get the report and look into it and that, so. So with that, I think we're gonna have Samantha and Peace, and I'm hoping Rick can give me a little bit of background and introduction, and glad to have you here and be part of that. And it's been a long time coming, and For those who don't know, she recently did a training for a lot of the center volunteers and staff around the state. There was about 50 mediators in total at that, and had 2 hours to talk about some of the laws and uniqueness and trying to get that. So, John, thank you much for getting that minor word change, which made great changes as far as being able to do the education and outreach into our tasks and abilities. So with that, any more introduction, Rick, as far as?
Samantha, came on board, and she's our the representative for Oregon Law Center that's assisting our tenants with some legal issues. She's our legal assistance program attorney, and she's got a full plate, and she's been fantastic at what she's doing. And but Samantha, I'll let you toot your own horn on your background, and I'll let you go with that. Welcome.
Thanks, Rick. And hi, everyone. It's nice to meet y'all and see new faces. So yeah, my name is Samantha Sheehan. I've been an attorney for the past 3 years. The first year out of law school, I was a clerk for the Circuit Court of Lane County. And in law school, I actually clerked for Oregon Law Center as well, and got to represent low-income tenants through the clinic program in law school. So I've been able to, when I clerked on the landlord-tenant docket. So I was able to see that docket go through almost every single day. And when I first came to Oregon Law Center, I started out at the Eviction Defense Project. So I was defending tenants in eviction cases that were filed in court. And then in June of 2022, I want to say, I started this position where now I am the attorney that was contemplated in that original SB 568 or 586. And finally, we got around to hiring someone, and that someone was me. So we've been working the last year and a half to kind of establish the program, to get referral forms, and to kind of create a relationship with OHCS, so we kind of know what types of cases are best to kind of push over to the mediation, what types of cases should be coming to attorneys. And one of the great things, John worked on getting an amendment to 586 that allows me to do tenant training and outreach. And so part of what we've been doing in the last, I say, like 2 months or so, we've done, I think, two tenant trainings, maybe one, two or one, can't remember. There's been a lot of trainings in the last month or so. We've been really putting the pedal to the metal, and we've been doing really a lot of good work on tenant trainings. I've also been doing attorney trainings to kind of build up that capacity of attorneys to work on these types of cases throughout the state of Oregon. And another thing that I've been really working on is developing a kind of like a handout bank, a bank of things that, documents that can be helpful to tenants, whether it's a sample repair request letter, or, a letter to request your receipts, or a handbook, or a little packet about how to form a committee of 7. So we've been working on those as well, and attempting to kind of streamline what information is out there between OHCS, us here at Oregon Law Center, and LASSO, so kind of that Oregon legal aid, and then also with OSTA as well, so that all 3 of these organizations who are reaching the facility tenants most in Oregon all kind of have that same information, that standardized bank of information, and that we can get that posted as many places as we can over the internet. So that's kind of the new stuff we've been working on. Of course, I represent individual tenants and committees of 7 across the state of Oregon. I am based in Lane County. I live here in Springfield, and I generally work from home, but I do represent tenants across the state of Oregon. So in any county, they can come to me. And I do have a much higher financial eligibility requirement than the rest of legal aid. So generally speaking, legal aid has a fairly low financial threshold to get in to be approved for that free legal representation. But my threshold is higher. It's at 80% AMI by county. So I am able to reach more tenants and represent more tenants across the state than our general legal aid programs can. And I see that John has something to say, and he's the resident legal aid expert and housing expert. So we'll let him take it away.
Thanks, Samantha. Ideally, Samantha's gonna take my place as the legal aid expert on manufactured home parks when I retire at the end of this year. I just wanted to add that there are not very many lawyers in the state of Oregon who know manufactured housing landlord tenant law, and there are some important differences between that and general landlord tenant law. I would say less than 5 on the landlord side, and I would say and private lawyers, and I would say maybe 3 on the tenant side. That's a small number. So one of the concepts in Senate Bill 586 was that we would use this position to leverage Sam's position to leverage other legal aid lawyers in other parts of the state. Legal aid has offices all over the state. We cover the entire state. And the concept is our hope or concept was that those lawyers might be more willing to take those manufactured home park cases if they had Samantha as an expert to help them co-counsel that case and not have to learn it from zero. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, John. And I'll say that, I think that that's been successful. I get emails from legal aid attorneys across the state at least once a week about cases that they're working on, manufactured housing cases that they're working on, where I can provide support. And I think it's been really helpful for these attorneys because rather than, you have to dive straight in, you got to look through all these statutes, figure out which one's going to apply and which not. There's a lot of kind of just that groundwork that you have to do at the beginning of a case to determine what law you're even supposed to look at. And so I've been able to really help attorneys in that aspect where they can reach out to me, I can point them in the right direction, and then they are able to kind of jump off, and then I can come in and help with more of those complicated questions, or when those cases become when they are more complex cases, like John said, I can hop on and co-counsel in those cases. But what's been great is I've been able to do CLEs as well. So actually training these attorneys across the state. And I want to say we've had at least 50 attorneys in those trainings that we've done. We've done 2 so far. So I'm hopeful that will just continue, and we'll continue to build up that capacity within legal aid. I'm always encouraging offices to take the clients that are actually eligible for their services, and when clients are not eligible for their services because they're over income, that's when you want to shoot those people over to me. But give it a stab for yourself first before you shoot it over to me. So that's kind of been our policy, and I think it's been working. So it's great to see more and more attorneys in Oregon working on these cases. But that's about it for me. I think I've been able to represent, almost 100 people in the last year and a half, which has been great. And, we've formed at least 4 committees, committee of 7s, and their landlords have recognized them. We've successfully dealt with some park-wide issues for utility billing. And one of the really great things, John mentioned that there's only a few landlord attorneys that do this type of work in Oregon as well. And so through this time, I've been able to meet all of those attorneys and build a working relationship with them, and also some park managers, some of the bigger management companies. And so, I think that it's often very helpful if we can have both sides have friendly relationships. Of course, we're not always going to be on the same side, and we're not always going to agree, but the better relationships we can have, the more likely it is that we will find agreements without having to have crazy battles. So that's been great. I think that the more time I spend in this position, the more valuable it will become. And John's got some big shoes and I hope I can fill them well.
Let me add a couple of other points. Some people think that lawyers make things more complicated, and that sometimes is true. But I think a lot of times, especially in the landlord-tenant world, having a lawyer on at least one side often enables the parties to get more realistic about what their rights are and what's a reasonable conclusion. So when Senate Bill 586 created this position, in 2019, the landlords in the coalition supported it. Now, that may be a surprise to some landlords, but the landlords in the coalition, especially Bill Miner, who is the president of MHCO, now Manufactured Housing Communities of Oregon board right now, and is a practicing attorney in Portland, strongly supported it. So it's not viewed as a negative thing. And a lot of what I envisioned in writing 586 was that Samantha would be out in the communities, meeting in parks, answering questions. Lack of information is a huge problem for tenants and for landlords, but our focus has mostly been tenants. And so if tenants don't know what the law is, they don't know what their rights are, they also don't know what to expect that they can require of a landlord. So I'm pleased that Representative Marsh's 2023 bill, House Bill 3151, amended the law to make it clear that her role includes doing outreach and education. I think that will be an especially important part of her job. Thanks.
I also wanted to say one quick thing about it too, if I could. I just because it's not completely apparent what that means when there's a handful of landlord attorneys and very few tenant attorneys for specifically facilities. And so when someone gets into trouble like I did before I knew of OSTA and the coalition and you know, all the other things, and before 586 was a thing, I got, you know, I was in a situation in which I really wanted some legal advice. I didn't know what my rights were. I was lost. And so I did what every normal person would do. I started doing internet searches to find somebody. And it was very painful to find anyone, but the way that landlord attorneys market themselves as landlord tenant law. So of course, all the landlord attorneys come up in my searches. And so I started calling them. The good news is I had great advice, and the great advice is to find out if there are any conflict of interests before you start spilling the beans about your particular situation. So I was able to weed out the first 5 people I called as being pro landlord attorneys and having some sort of connection with my landlord. And then finally I was like, well, this isn't working. I'm going to get a private referral. So I got a private referral from somebody I knew and trusted. And when I called, I said, hey, before I start telling you my specific scenario, I need to make sure that there are no conflict of interests. And they said, oh, that's a good thing to do. I'll go do some research and I'll call you back. They called back in an hour and said, well, actually, we do all the legal work for your landlord. So all the personal legal work for your landlord. So I was like, well, okay, great. So I just wanted to tell you about the pathway of someone who was really looking to find information and legal assistance, and how hard it is to just, you know, even when you know you're going to probably spend some sort of money to do this, how difficult it is to find somebody who actually knows your law and represents you and isn't going to, you know, I mean, I just think I would have been devastated if I started talking to this attorney about all the things that my landlord was doing. And then they said, oh, we can't represent you, but thanks for the info. We'll send that right over to their attorney. I don't know if they do that. I think that's conflict of interest or something, but I wasn't their client. So who knows? Anyway, I'm really grateful that there's somebody that you can search on the internet and now find that this thing exists.
Well, I'll just,
Theoretically, that attorney should stop you before you are spilling those beans. But yes, then that's a great point. And I mean, I've even done those Google searches, right? Of just kind of just to see what it is, or sometimes like I'll just Google search legal aid, and it actually, it takes a little bit for things to come up. Like sometimes you got to scroll through a few pages. So I definitely think that there is, if you're not a total internet sleuth, there are certainly still boundaries and barriers to finding the people that can help you. But again, and that's part of why I'm really hoping that we can streamline and, get consistent all the information that's on OHCS, on OSTA, on Oregon Law Help, on all these websites. And so that if you find one, you find it all, right? Rather than like having disparate information in different places, having some of it here and some of it there, because it's hard and it takes time. And unfortunately, a lot of my clients are older seniors, like in their later 80s, and they're struggling to send me emails, much less sleuthing through the internet to try and find people. So I definitely think that that's a really good point, Angela, and just trying to think about access as we're going through all of these things it's really important.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think the education piece is key, because my experience is the majority of managers and the smaller park and marina owners, they all want to do what's right and what's legal. They just don't understand the laws and that, especially being that, as we say over and over, that landlord tenant and marina and community manufacturing is so complex and so interwoven that just that education to help people understand how the system is and educate resolves the vast majority, and especially when it can be taken, like you say, presented in a resolution focus versus the adversarial, you're right, you're wrong. And that's where that power of that education is huge and will resolve so much of it. And on that, I'm just curious if it is on your radar as far as doing updates to the legal aid resources and the Oregon State Bar posts, because I know those are rather dated. And I know you have lots of data. I just know like the legal aid one, on that, it was 2017. And then John has his name on the last one of the Oregon State Bar, which was 2018. And the one before that is 2015. So there's been
Yes,
lots of
we've got,
changes.
that is on the docket. What I've looked at all those documents that we've had out there before, and just having experience working so closely with this client population, I think those documents would work really well for about like 30-40%. And then for, the other 60%, it's going to be a little bit over their head, I think. And just, it's a lot of information packed into one little thing. So what I'm trying to do is kind of separate things out a little bit, rather than have one packet that explains everything, that kind of break it down into, okay, abandoned property and sale of home. And, so people are a little bit able to find their issue a little bit more easily. But yes, those things are absolutely in the works. And we've got some things that are pretty much ready to go, and then some things that are still being developed. But yes, agree with you. And we are working on them.
But to be clear, Brian, Sam's talking about the materials that Oregon Law Center posts online. The bar stuff, the bar controls when and whether they'll be updated. We don't have authority to change them ourselves.
Yeah, no, I know that. In my experience with them, they're more than happy if someone takes it on and provides it a lot of times. But again, you don't have the authority to unilaterally do that. But it was just some of those pieces are good. Getting some more resources on there. I think what I'd like to do is tentatively review and approve the minutes from the last meeting, in hopes that when the current membership count is done, that 4 is a quorum instead of 5. But if not, oh, Jan just joined us, so we are officially at a quorum.
Hey, I wanted to offer too, I have to leave in 6 minutes,
Okay.
so let's quickly do whatever we
Yes.
need to do to keep this quorum.
Well, I think the official one is review and approval of the minutes from the last meeting. If folks can look through the October 4th one.
I move approval.
Is there a second? Jan, or I saw no hand. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. And I think the next critical one is our next meeting. We have switched to a quarterly format. So that would put us in the beginning of May, I believe. And does the May first work for folks? I know there was a little bit of discussion as far as possibly shifting a week to the second week. I can't remember where the conflict was for folks, or if that is still even a conflict for whoever that was.
So Brian, I was assuming we would be meeting in April.
Oh, yes, that is correct. I'm sorry, I miscounted months. So that would be April 3rd or 10th.
And it's fine with me if it's the second Wednesday instead of the first. I don't care.
Angela, you're on mute. It looks like you had.
I was just checking my schedule. I think the second Wednesday is bad for me.
Okay, so we can go ahead and have it.
And Judy, do you care?
No, Jan, what about you? Any? You're good. And you're great. Okay, so the next meeting will be April 3rd, and Jan, what we've covered is we had Samantha from the Oregon Law Center talked about her role and the number of people she's been able to serve since that legislative change, and about 100 folks, and is working to build those relationships and get information out. She's done some tenant education. She also did education for the mediators and community centers. There was about 54 in attendance for that. And legislatively, for the upcoming short session, which is the 35-day, currently there is nothing on the radar, but there's starting to be planning and that preliminary discussion for the 2025, which would be the full session. But right now, folks are looking at that. Then Stephen did a presentation on the information that we get back from the mediator report and participant surveys, and those will be getting sent out to us to look through and dive into deeper, and then formulate questions and just follow-up discussion at the next meeting we have. And that is the main piece, and with Ken not being here, we'll be waiting to have a further discussion on the notices piece, and Rick is getting ready to get that piece launched. Anything I missed, Angela, or others want to put in there while we have a quorum?
My copy of the agenda has an item number 8, discussion on possible topics
Yes,
for ORS revisions, and maybe we can make that the focus of the April meeting. We're not going to do anything in the 24 special session, short session, but we should prepare for the 25 longer session. And the ideas that I've heard mentioned that we could discuss at the April meeting. One would be the special assessment that the tenants pay that supports MMCRC. That's one. The second one is I've heard concerns that regarding the mandatory mediation process, it would help the department and the CDRCs if there were some clarity around who, if the landlord, has authority to agree to something. I don't fully understand that, but that's what I heard people talk about. Another one was working with county tax collectors to streamline the process for getting the special assessment money to HCS. And then I think a fourth one was whether there are concerns with the CDRCs about doing group mediation, where it's a committee of 7 or a tenants committee or something like that. And I think I heard the CDRCs say that that's not a problem, but there is a question about what if a landlord refuses to participate, what's the penalty? Is it a 1 month's rent for everybody, or just one month's rent? So those are the issues that I've heard in the past, and I think it would be good to have a discussion and see whether we want to support anything for 25. And I know that Representative Marsh would be supportive of introducing legislation on those issues.
And I guess what are the other ones in there that may dovetail in there is what pieces of process for like reporting and mandatory pieces can get addressed through administrative rule versus actually having to have a legislative change, because timelines to participate in mediation and some of those other ones, I don't have the knowledge or expertise, but I know within the original creation, it had said the agency could create administrative rules to help administer the laws. If
So,
And
so
that was it.
typically, Brian, the strategy, the legislative or the legal framework is that if it's within the clear parameters of what the statute says, then the agency can do rulemaking. Otherwise, it may require a special delegation. The landlord leader, Chuck Carpenter of MHCO, greatly distrusts agency rulemaking. So
that's a helpful piece of history.
that may be a hot potato.
Okay, no,
if
and
it's
that's
not
fine.
clear that the agency has authority to do the rulemaking on a certain topic.
Yeah, no, don't want to open up hot potatoes, and it was looking for a path of least resistance instead of having something totally clarified if it's operational, more what I put in that operational realm, if it's easier on that one, but get that. And so that will definitely be on the April agenda and topics, and I think that's a good list you provided there. And that also addresses the 2024 meetings piece as well. And with that, I actually had a conversation with Bill Miner, and he had expressed some openness to potentially joining this group or participating at some level. And the nomination and request piece I know is outside of it, but as we look to get that and maintain that diversity and other piece, if that's a helpful and appropriate one too. That is someone I know who expressed some tentative with, oh, you're on mute, John.
Are you asking whether the department should appoint?
Or make that piece, or at least reach out and have a conversation to know what it was. If it was like, oh, I'm interested in this joining as a guest, or was willing to be a member.
So I would be strongly in favor of doing that. Bill Miner is very knowledgeable and skilled. He's fair. I would consider him a friend, and he's been very helpful with Representative Marsh in drafting the legislation she's put forward the last couple sessions on manufactured home park tenancies. So he's a collaborative guy and reasonable and smart.
I mean, that would help get some of those, like I said, vacancies filled and get our membership back up. And I think the other one is Kat, who is the CERC director at the Bend Center, which is the covers Deschutes and area. She has joined the group and should be getting her official one, and will hopefully be here at the next meeting as well. And that, I think, is all I have, if there's nothing for others. And thank you, Jan.
I wanted to add one thing. Sorry, my email is incorrect in the minutes, but it was only if people wanted to send in information about changing what their thoughts were about changing the statute, but it was correct in my email that I sent to everyone. Sorry.
As long as we did the reply all, we were good.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. And that, anything else, Rick, or others from the department?
No, we're good.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful continued new year as we travel into our third day. And it's always a good thing when a 2-hour meeting gets done in an hour. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.